Okay, so I was actually going to suggest everyone introduces themselves so we can start at one end and work our way down. And then in addition to introducing yourself, if you might be able to mention one or two projects that you've been involved in developing and in what capacity. So whether it was design, investment, or building an overall concept. So let's start with Rob on the end.
Hello, everyone. Rob Polachek. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Puccini Group. We're a San Francisco-based company working all over the world. We're working here in Abu Dhabi, actually, with Emirates Palace, on a restaurant concept that's very exciting for us. And it gets us here as often as we love to come here.
Afternoon, everyone. Naeem Madad. Again, I represent Gates Hospitality. We wear different hats. We are investors and operators, as well as consultants. UAE based, but we're making an international array probably end of this year, soon to be in London. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tufik. I'm with Odema Consulting Services. So we're a consulting company based in Beirut. A couple of projects we worked with, I'll name two in Dubai. One is Logma, so we helped in the creation and implementation of this project. It's Khaliji cuisine. And the other one is we recently are working with is Switch, gourmet shawarma shop. We're helping them, they're already existing, we're helping them set up their development strategy and their franchising manuals and setup, etc.
Hello, I'm Neto Orazlike. I'm the founder of Genesis Group Nigeria. Over the past 25 years, built a food group that has restaurants, catering for the oil and gas, and the snack food manufacturing, in addition to some other interests in cinemas and hotels.
Okay, great. So if I'm honest, I think the not unsubstantial task of demystifying restaurant development is a bit of an ask in 24 minutes. So we're going to keep it across a few quite concise areas, which are opportunities, areas of focus, marketing and knowing the customer, misconceptions, and surviving the first year. We might not actually get through all of that, but we will try. So first of all, let's start with opportunities. So what is the checklist that a restaurant developer should really be thinking about before actually even starting down the path of developing a restaurant? Is it location? Is it bringing an existing franchise? I know that, Naeem, you've recently opened Folly by Nick and Scott at Medina Jumeirah, which is a new concept. So it'd be good to start with you maybe on that.
Look, again, opening a restaurant as an investment as such, I don't think there's one point that we look at. We look at a multiple of events, of cycles, I call them, and location is definitely one of them, but unlike others, we're not actually going around trying to sell a brand. We're looking at locations saying, who is the audience for this site? Who actually frequents time in this neighborhood? Who is the audience? And then we'll try and provide a solution for that audience, considering that we're looking at 5 years to 10 years longevity. Location is a prime example for us. People that actually will fly the flag, who as local partners as such, or the guardians of the brand as such. Very important for us. So there's multiple facets in order when we consider what's next.
Rob?
Playing off of that, we really look at the neighborhood. Whether it's 2 blocks or 10 blocks, it's really understanding your market. And understanding that if the community supports the brand and the concept, then the guests will want to stay there because it becomes part of the fabric of how people are eating in that part of the world.
Definitely what Robert is saying, I agree with knowing exactly what the demand is. And I think if we want to draw a checklist for opening a restaurant business or any hospitality business, first 2 things, there's only 2 things on the checklist. The first one is called the market study. So know exactly where are you opening, what is the supply, what is the demand, what's the competition like, and the geographical location of where you want to open or the prospects of where you want to open. So that's the first one. Second one, and so often as a consulting company, we see people overlooking a little bit this aspect, is the most important, and it's a feasibility study. So how much will it cost? How much money will it get you back, and how fast? So a lot of times, people are excited going to open a restaurant. It's going to be nice. I'm going to have people coming in and out and eating and enjoying themselves. But they forget it's going to cost money. You have to support this financially. So these are the 2 on my checklist anyway.
Looking at the demography for the particular place you're going to open a restaurant is very important for us in Nigeria, where there's still a lot of opportunities and the market is very underdeveloped. With 180 million people yearning for good experiences, it's about knowing what particular set of people in a particular place want and then how to develop it or deliver it. We've seen ourselves go from fine dining to a casual dining, just to adjust to the rising middle class and the taste of the people, and then, fashion what we're going to do, to suit that particular taste. Again, you can never overlook location. It's always location, location, location for us. And on this particular street, we've seen ourselves closing one restaurant further down, like 500 meters on the street, to open another one, and it's very successful, while the other one was not. Where they're coming from, whether they're going home or they're going to work, always happens to be a major factor for us in choosing the location. So it's always better to locate it when they're going back from work. And then, with less mothers cooking at home, it makes things easier for us, back home there.
Well, everyone gets very concerned, of course, about return on investment, as you mentioned, Tufik. So before we get on to that, let's first of all think about the investment. What are some of how should that be proportioned? I mean, is it on the design? Is it on the staffing? In terms of almost creating a kind of blueprint for someone who's perhaps fresh to restaurant development, what kind of ratio or proportion would you suggest in terms of where that investment gets allocated?
It's very hard to say. I think, personally, I look at every particular project as a unique project. I look at the size of the site. I look at the concept that I'm planning on putting in place. I look at my rent factor. And then my projections, as Tufik referred to, they come into play. So I look at 5-year projections saying that this is what my revenues are going to be. How much should I be observing out of that in order to inject into the business? Not forgetting that we are working in a market that is extremely aggressive, very fast-paced, and highly competitive. As a matter of fact, our local market here is probably a little bit oversaturated. And we need to make sure that authenticity, and I think you and I have spoken about this in details the other day, that's really what it is. It's making sure that we develop a concept and spend the right amount of money on it in the right area for longevity. Not because it's a trend, let's do it, let's copy what everyone else is doing. No, we come up with an authentic concept that we believe we can deliver. We know that the market is actually craving for, and it has legs to deliver for 5 years, 10 years.
What do you think, Tufik, in terms of where that investment should go?
Well, we definitely have to have a well-structured and budget which makes sense. But I think a good concept is the balance between all the elements that constitute this concept. There aren't real ratios of is it that much on the branding or that much on the interior design? How much should I invest in my kitchen equipment? Because all of this is more or less standard. But the thing is to have a coherent budget where all the elements go together. Let's say if you invest in an interior design for a restaurant, like if you invest $2 million there and you only invest $10,000 in the branding, it is not coherent. So you'll have an abnormal born restaurant or concept. So coherence is very important. And I don't think there's one element more important than the others. I don't know what the guys think. I'll just add a couple of things that a lot of investors or even consultants sometimes forget to mention. And very important here for the audience to take back with them is the pre-opening budget, which it's within the budget, but it's something that a lot of times people say, I'm going to invest $1 million. Okay, $1 million is the finished product, but you have maybe 10 or 20% of this $1 million to add on top, and that will be your pre-opening. So you have a couple of months of training, testings, trials, salaries, rent. Yeah, you have so many, and this has to be taken into consideration. And the other thing is new, I can call it a trend, but definitely something we have to look to have in our concepts today is the IT platform. So my colleague Nada talked a little bit earlier today about the tech trend. Yes, it is a trend, but I think it's also a necessity. We cannot just go with having a Casio POS system anymore. We have to have the back office, we have to have the ERM, we have to have customer relationship management. We have to have the I mean, we have to have a complete IT platform that can support our concept.
Yeah, okay. So I think one place in our part of the world that people overlook towards the end is the marketing. Okay, and I think, you know, by the time you've started the restaurant and spent all the money in the location, the rent, the lease, or you're building out, and then by the time you get in towards the end, you're running out of money to do the necessary marketing. So, I mean, I think people should make a lot of conscious effort to keep money for marketing. You know, there's no hard and fast rule on the amount it should be. It's just you should work that budget before you start the project and find a way to be disciplined on its execution.
There is a restaurant actually in Dubai, Kubara, who is the same chef that was actually at Rua, where I'm sure some of you visited yesterday. And it was a very expensive project and a very expensive build, which has now closed and was a result really of location. So as a result of that, it wasn't just a failure, it was a very expensive failure. So in terms of looking at how you define a budget in terms of restaurant development, do you think it has to be in proportion to the level of risk? And does a restaurant ever justify these days the kind of expense that was lathered on somewhere like that? Rob?
I think it starts, you know, going back to understanding your market. And if the market says you should only be investing 1 million, then that's where you need to be. And then it allows you to start to understand what I'm going to get for that million, how much I'm going to earmark for design, what am I going to put towards marketing and PR, because that's, at the end of the day, once that restaurant's open, if your best customer is one you already have. So if you keep them and keep telling the story and changing that story and using PR and marketing to keep the umph going, you can get through that first year, and then all of a sudden, you're not just the flash in the pan, but you're something that's established in the community.
Equally as important, I think, Harry, it depends what the objective of that business is. 5 years ago, the first venue that we did, one of the first venues was Reform Social and Grill. It's 5 years into its life today. It's an institution in Dubai. Now, we've actually overspec'd a little bit. We've overspent because my objective was actually to position the company and say we're coming in, we understand the business, we understand the audience. Having said that, we're prepared to a little bit, you know, extend the capital in order to make sure we have longevity and flex muscles. Our recent addition, whether it's Public, whether it's Folly, if you look at the spend on Reform, Social and Grill and the spend on Public and Folly, there's a huge actually savings that we have achieved. We've become smarter, we've become more savvy on the cost factor, and equally as important, we've ticked many boxes today. So I think it depends on the objective as well. Where do you spend the money and how do you spend it right? And I was saying to Rob earlier, in Folly, and I hope a lot of you are joining us this evening for the event this evening at Folly in Souk Medinat, we've spent money right. You know, anything that as a guest, you as a guest would touch, whether it's linen, whether it's the tabletops, whether it's the chairs, that's where we've spent the money. And of course, what we're trying to do with Folly is, as a brand concept, ROI, is I've invested in local heroes. These chaps are brands themselves. They are here, they're cooking, they're in the kitchen, day in, day out. That's where my ROI is going to happen, is with these guys. These are the brands. They will deliver day in, day out. And they actually, when you go to these venues, unlike international chefs, these guys are in the kitchen. They're your hosts. The same with Bistro des Arts. My 2 French colleagues on the ground, they're there, day in, day out. And that's, I think, depends on the objective of where the business model is going. There's certain percentages where you either decide to spend a little bit more, or you say, okay, let's tone it down a bit.
So I think what you mentioned about marketing was quite interesting. Something like Reform, for example, if it's a showpiece, it's only a showpiece if people know about it. So you seem to think that there should be a budget allocated for traditional marketing methods, whereas someone else might say that there are ways of generating publicity and word of mouth without having to allocate a substantial spend. So I'd like to get your thoughts on, once you've got the doors open, how you go about generating interest and whether you need to basically spend money on that or whether there are other methods that will attract attention without having to do that. So what do you think?
Well, I think it depends on where you're opening your concept, because we're talking about Middle East here. So each country is very different from another, where you have, let's say, somewhere a concept that opens in Dubai, it will start out like slowly, and the customer base will pick up later. If you open a business in Beirut, you'll have a lot of people at the beginning, first month, and then it will then drop to your cruise number of customers if you're successful. So it really depends on where you're opening. But once you have the doors open, two types of media, in my opinion, should be used. The traditional media should be used just to tell people informational, tell the people where you're located, your telephone number, a map, or your menu, communicate like informational messages. But definitely what I call the word of mouth. So word of mouth means social media, yes, but it means social media coming from your guests, not from you. You cannot, Snapchat yourself in the restaurant, as an owner or an operator, and say, I've just had the best soup. It's not really what people are looking for. This is why TripAdvisor, for example, and Zomato are popular, and people tend to check them out to select their dining experience. And it's important. Instagram is, I think, a very powerful tool, a marketing tool, where in the second where the customer gets his food or his drink, he will take a picture and he will Instagram it in the next 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. So if you've done something wrong, your comment card at the end of the dining experience and your CRM to call him back and tell him we're sorry will not do it. So you have to be really, really careful and waiting for these word of mouth people to spread your good experience.
Right. Like you said, if you're doing it yourself, it's very in your face. Like, okay, the restaurant's doing it. They're doing their own kind of PR, if you will. But if you allow your guest to have that interaction with your food, and then for instance on Instagram, whether it's a good or bad comment, you have to make sure that you respond back to your guest, right? So you continue the story and say, I'm really sorry, we're gonna make it better, or I'm glad you really enjoyed it, you should come back. Because then all of a sudden, that post, now as you're responding to it, you're just going all the way back to all those people that already read it, right? So you kind of let the guests start to become your PR and marketing team just through word of mouth, and then it's a no cost to the restaurant.
Market engagement. It's how do you engage with your clients? Because today we're living in a world that's moving so fast. So we need to make sure that we're engaged on all of these platforms. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that our PR agencies, our representatives out there are telling the stories, not ourselves, and making sure that we get traction from the audience, who will become our best ambassadors, who will fly the flag on your behalf if you continue to tick all the boxes, whether it's sustainability, whether it's organic, whether it's a story, whether it's a chef. They'll fly the flag for you. But I think early in the piece, what we need to be doing is making sure that we fuel these stories to create them, to get people excited. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they won't hear about them. We need to make sure they're out there so we'll get that engagement.
So how have you done that with Folly, for example, to use an actual running
so
restaurant?
Folly we've anchored Folly in three chapters. Obviously, the guys behind the brand, Nick and Scott, are a brand themselves. Secondly, the food. And I've made a statement early in the piece this year saying that I envisage Folly to change the food scene in the region, on the quality, on the perspective, on the experience. And last but not least, we've gone into a marketplace that's extremely crowded. Mm-hmm. And we've gone in with 3 price tiers. 45, 70, and 110. Now, getting fed from a Michelin star chef at these kind of prices, that's a very big story. And most of the people in this field, so to speak, very much engaged, and they've been very great support to what we're doing. And the location, last but not least, my location is phenomenal. I'll have 5 terraces, an indoor, overlooking Burj Al Arab, overlooking the Arabian Sea. So it's we've ticked many boxes, and we've gone to the market with all of these stories in a manner that's being very well structured.
So then once the doors are open, once you've got the customers through the door, the first year is notoriously tough. So I think it's good to think about the development of a restaurant as it's ongoing. So what are some of the areas of focus that people should be considering in terms of that first year, areas that need continued investment, continued focus to make sure that you survive that?
I think it's the training. Consistency is key, right? Mm-hmm. And the experience of your guests. So on day one, if the food is great, on day one of the second year, the food still has to be great, if not even better, because that's going to be your kind of calling point to say you've captured that guest in the honeymoon. now you want to keep them coming back. So consistency with training the staff, making sure you're up on in terms of what's kind of trending in terms of a menu item that has to change, and allowing yourself to be a little bit organic, but to make sure that your guest is always happy.
And consistency in customer service is also critical in that first year, so that after the first visit, you want him to come back and come back again. Okay, so the training comes in very handy to ensure, and then the right culture in the organization that will keep the staff motivated to keep delivering that consistent service all through the life of the restaurant.
Equally as important for me as well, there's two factors here, two maturity factors. Factor one is market maturity, and who are we competing with, who are we playing with? And the other one is brand maturity as well. We need to keep evolving. We need to keep making sure that just because the first 12 months have been a success story, it doesn't mean we stop and we rest on our morals and we keep pushing out the same. We need to keep evolving. We need to make sure we lead from the front in whatever concept we have decided to be in. And I think equally as important from an ROI perspective for me is to stay on brand. Because a lot of operators, you see, they start with an Italian, then all of a sudden it's not working very well, they add sushi. And then all of a sudden the brand becomes anything but nothing, all of a sudden. And you see, you just don't know what to get anymore. And I think staying on brand is principally fundamental, day in, day out, making sure that we're evolving in the right direction on brand.
So as the last question then, before we throw it out to some audience questions, what are some of the greatest misconceptions about restaurant development now that all of you have been quite practiced?
There's absolutely nothing, there's nothing pleasurable about our business other than success. People look at our business, outsiders, and they think it's very glorious. It's a glorious business. It's actually hard work. Before they all wake up, we're in the kitchen market sourcing, we're making sauces, it's not an ego business, it's not a glorious business, not a glamorous business, it's hard work, day in, day out. And that message needs to be heard, understood, and then people will believe us.
Yeah, so I think visually you should consider what you want in terms of return. Is there a return on your ego, like the hotel talked about, restaurant you talked about in Dubai, a return on your investment. So you want to keep your eyes on the figures, and also to ensure that your team understand the figures, because they just shouldn't assume that all the money that comes into the till is profit. They need to understand how it translates to, to the survival of the restaurant.
Well, I'll definitely back up what Naeem is saying. It's a very hard work type of business. So if you're not ready to, get your hands dirty, even if you're an owner, you have to visit the kitchen sometimes. You have to, if you're passing by a table, ask if a customer if he's happy, if you can help him further. Talk with your employees, all of them, dishwasher, manager, waiter, all of them. So it's really hard work, and people should, be ready to get their hands dirty with all of the stuff going on.
I have one other point that I've actually left out. It's very important, essential, is not forgetting who's actually flying the flag for us day in, day out. Because whilst I'm sitting here, I have 7 venues out there who are actually generating revenues and hopefully delivering on brand. So the people that we sign up, the people that we team up with, have to understand the following. One is brand, what it is, what it's supposed to be delivering, philosophy long term. Make sure that they believe that they're leading from the front and they're empowered to lead from the front. With, as I think Stuart actually mentioned, support office. We have the support office. We do the purchasing, we do the IT, we do the HR, we do all of that support. But it is a support system. It's not a superior or an inferior system. It's a support system in place. So the team is very important. And they need to be staying engaged day in, day out. Because again, unlike other restaurants, we call every shift, we call it service. Why is it service? Because that's what the industry started at. We actually deliver a service day in, day out. That's what we do.
Right. Yeah, it's providing that guest with an expectation that you want to try to exceed their expectation, and it starts with service. I mean, the food has to be good, of course, but if it's coming out and your staff is not proud of their job, or they feel like they're overworked or not being compensated enough, then all of a sudden it starts to break itself down, and you just become yet another F&B establishment, and not something that everyone wants to go to and feel the energy of the staff and the whole concept. It really kind of comes together.
Well, we've only got 2 minutes left, but it would be good to throw out some audience questions if anyone has anything they would like to ask the panel. Anyone?
Why, according to you guys, is there a major trend towards sort of global expansion or sort of franchising out? I mean, the core of a restaurant is single unit, chef-led, intimate experience. Why are everyone sort of making it like a, template to go global?
There's a commercial aspect to the business. It's certainly not a template. In my own portfolio, not two brands are the same. They're all very unique. And again, like I started by saying, we look at a location and we plug in a solution. At the end of the day, we're service providers, and we're service providers to a massive audience, unless we box ourselves in. So there is no platform. The platform is a support office. that's what's disciplined. The rest is a la minute, so to speak.
Well, I think the trend is global. Today with the globalization, it's very easy to go somewhere else with your business, with your product, or yourself. So I think it's a global trend with everything, not only restaurants. And today we see that people like to explore, like to try new things. So if I'm in Kenya, I have nice food. I would actually like to try the Kenyan cuisine. But today, I cannot go to Kenya every couple of months. So today I have the opportunity of someone who franchised this cuisine in my region or in my country. So I think this is why the trend of globalization or franchising, developing in other countries exists, on top of course, what the guys are saying. It's, at the end, it's commercial, it's a business. So.
Great. Are there any more questions before we wrap up?
It's not red yet, it's not flashing, so we have a bit of time.
We have 16 seconds. Hilary.
Since it's the yearly conference, what's been the most exciting concept in the last 12 months that you've seen?
I can't comment. I'm going to be biased. I've got two of them.
That's not part of your business.
For me, I think that we get our most inspiration when we travel the world and we eat in the street, right? And you really understand how people come together over food and beverage. And I think that's where you become authentic, because that's how the locals do it, right? And so if you can capture that excitement about eating and being part of a community and really connecting with your food and where it comes from, then you could take that and you could be authentic anywhere, because you're really holding yourself to a point of sharing conversation or sharing an intimate moment, or whatever that may be, over food and beverage. And I think that's where it starts, and then you could take it and go with it. My answer to that is I'm looking at the market as a playground, and I'm actually looking at the guys who are doing things right. That's my aspiration. I'm saying, if they can get it right, we need to do it different, but we need to get it right equally as right. And rather than sitting here plugging brands, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of success stories. There's a lot of closures as well, and we haven't spoken about them in the last 48 hours, and I think we should be speaking about them because it's growing pains, I call it. But we need to learn from the best, and we need to keep moving forward. And not everything has to be expensive and luxury. Again, Gates, as a company, we're mid to upper market, and we're providing solutions for people to come into our venues 3-4 times a week. That's.
I think the best concepts that we've seen lately as foodies are not actually international brands or very advertised brands. And sometimes, like Robert was saying, you get surprised when you go in a small street in Barsha or in Riyadh or in Beirut, and you discover this small mom and pop shop who does this extraordinary pizza, or we the Lebanese have the pie with the garnish, which is very popular. So I just discovered one a couple of weeks ago in a small street somewhere in Beirut. So I think these are the concepts that we like most. It's not really, like Naeem was saying, it's not the $2 million concept without advertisement, but it's the little gems that you discover here and there.
I think in the last 5 years, particularly in Dubai, we've been gravitating to lifestyles rather than food. We've been eating out because the place has a great reputation, and you see people, and they'll see your car, they'll see your watch, they'll see your shoes, and then you eat. Folly, I want to change that. I want them to come and eat and do everything else. That's my take on it.
So I think we're quite enjoying the effect of e-marketing and social media really back home now, where there's much deeper penetration, in Africa now of the cellular phones, and the effect it's having on the on the consumption pattern of the people. So that's one area we're really paying a lot of attention to back home now, back in Nigeria.
Okay, great. Well, that's it. Thank you all for your time, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.